Hello, welcome back to Happy Catastrophe. I'm Candace, or Sister Min Bao. I am an ordained Buddhist nun, and you can call me Candace or Sister. And I am here today with another video, and this time we're going to talk about coloring the tarot, or tarot. Welcome to my channel, and thanks for coming back. Okay, so there's a lot of tarot books out on the market right now, and it's becoming more and more popular. And what I've noticed is that a lot of folks are purchasing books to color in the tarot because they love the images, especially in this Lulu Mayo book, which is brand new. Because of that, there's been a lot of talk about the tarot, and there's been some misinformation and some fear around it. A lot of people saying, I don't do the tarot, I don't like the tarot, I don't want to color it. So I just thought I'd give a little bit of information about it, and then look at these two books that I own. I am not a practicing tarot card reader. I have studied it a lot because I've always liked art, and especially art that was involved with other spiritual beliefs. And so especially growing up as a kid during the 80s and, the whole witchcraft, satanic panic thing, I was very interested in any sort of pagan practices. But one thing I found out when studying the tarot is that it's not a pagan practice. It's not witchcraft. And so I wasn't as interested in it because, of course, I was trying to rebel against my parents and everything else that was happening in the 80s. So I was an adult when I started getting interested in the tarot, and more from a perspective of an art form. And so I really studied it, and I believe Lulu Mayo also goes into some detail in the beginning of her book about the history of it. And she is correct. In the research that I did, I also saw that it was the early 15th century in Italy that the tarot started. And it started as a card game. Just like our cards, we have suits, we have diamonds and clubs and spades and hearts. Tarot had wands and cups and swords and coins. And those four have been called different things depending on the culture that the game was being played. But it basically meant, some form of monetary symbolism like coins, and then something that signified like strife or aggression or whatever, like swords. And then wands was more of the like airy intellectual side meanings. And then cups was love, overflowing with love. So those were the meanings of the four suits. And then the numbers had other meanings. Now, those meanings were probably introduced later because originally it was just a card game. And it was known as Lulu Mayo says, tarocchi, that was in Italy. Now, the earliest deck that I found was an Italian deck. It's a beautiful deck. I used to own it. I would have brought it out here. I'm going to look for a picture to show here. I was caught in the wildfires in Oregon in 2020 and lost those decks. So I've lost all my tarot decks, or otherwise I'd show them because I became something of a collector because they're just so beautiful. But the Italian then gave way. That was more popular in Eastern Europe, but it wasn't in English. It wasn't a game played in the Western Hemisphere. And it wasn't until the famous Rider-Waite tarot, which I'll show a picture here, that most of us have seen. And most of us believe that was the original tarot deck. And there's been a lot of decks based off of that. Now, one of the myths about tarot is that it is a conduit of evil, or some sort of witchcraft that can bring evil into your life. And it really isn't anything of the sort. It's been used as a divination tool. When I have gone to good tarot, I'm not sure I believe in divination, but when I've gone to a good tarot card reader, the reader is just using the very generic, basic meanings that these cards have. These cards are not specific. They're very basic, like soon you will have a new love entering your life, or you are facing some strife and difficulties at work, or you have recently had some success at work, or some friends will be coming into your life to help you cope with a problem. I mean, they're very generic. And so really almost anybody would relate to any of these meanings. But tarot card readers believe that in the order the cards are laid out, they can kind of then use that to sort of intuit what's going on with you and maybe offer some choices for the future. So it's almost like a very focused counseling session. Now, I've had several counselors in my life, and one that was very, very good. And I always thought she could read my mind. In fact, I told my mother as I grew up, I'm like, you're a mind reader. Okay, they're not mind readers. They're just really good at reading body language and facial expressions and tone inflection. And they maybe are very empathic and very in tune with the human condition. And it's not that these are charlatans or fakes, or that my mom was faking reading minds, but it's just that they're very good at connecting with people. And good tarot card readers are very good, and they use the cards that they draw to sort of guide them to what they think is worth talking about with you. And like I said, 99% of what's drawn is something that might be compatible with what you're going through, because they are very generic. If you were to put 10 tarot card readers in a room, probably all 10 would say they are guided by a guiding spirit or spirit guides or God or angels. I have yet to meet a tarot card reader that says that Satan was coming through them, or the devil, or some sort of evil spirit. That's not kind of what tarot's about. You might hear that more associated with Ouija boards and, seances and things like that. But almost every tarot card reader, if they believe in a higher power, will say it's God or angels or spirit guides or something like that, something personal to them. I would call it the higher intuition. Being a Buddhist, we don't have a God or belief in any sort of religious spirit belief system. We can. There are Christian Buddhists and Jewish Buddhists. Buddhist is just a practice. It's a spiritual practice. But and I'm open. I'm skeptic. I don't know. I don't know what happens after we die, and I don't know what's out there. But I do know that I've never experienced any sort of evil intentions when it comes to tarot. It's at the least, it's a game, and at the most, it's a way for someone who's already sort of an empath and intuit to kind of guide their thoughts. So, with that being said, hopefully that makes it less scary to color in books like this. You're not going to open up a portal to the other side or invite demons into your home. These are just artist renditions of what tarot is. And if you research tarot, you will find a bazillion decks. Every artist everyone who has an interpretation has made a deck. Lulu Mayo has a deck that's coming out or is already out. It's advertised in the back of her book. And I'm kind of excited about getting it because I want to see how, she colors her images. This book, and we can start with this book, but you'll see books from every practice, there are some beautiful books out there, tarot cards and tarot books. And that's one thing that makes them fun to collect. There are modern ones, like modern feminist renditions. This is sort of a modern feminist rendition, the kawaii rendition. There's every language. There's French and Italian, and there's famous painters have made tarot decks. It was sort of a thing to do, to be commissioned to paint one of these decks, and then the nobility or someone with a lot of money would commission this and buy this deck and then play the game with it. So I'm going to use these two books. What I'm doing, this whole talk is starting a series that I'm calling Coloring the Tarot. And we're going to start at the beginning and just give the very generic meaning of the card. And then I'll show you a couple of renditions of that card, and probably some more via some pictures I will show of other decks. And hopefully this will take the mystification out of what the tarot really is, that it's just a practical guide, a practical game, if you will. and that it will encourage you to look up these beautiful images and interest you in seeing how different people interpret it. Because the two interpretations, although these two illustrators kind of agree on, and they're settling on that very basic generic description of each card, of what each card means, they have interpreted them very differently. So it'll be interesting. So let's start with the very first card. So we're starting with the very first card of the deck, which originally did not have a number at all, but it has been since assigned the number 0. So most people consider the Fool. The Fool is the first card of the deck, and it for it to be numbered 0. Now, there's a great reason to start with the Fool, and in this book, Modern Witches Tarot Coloring Book by Lisa Sterle, there's there's a really good explanation of it. Now, this book does use the word witch. They mean it as a practitioner of divination and herbal herbs and things like that, trying to get in touch with the universe through natural means. And so that may turn you off. If this word bothers you, that may turn you off. But this is really basically just a diary with prompts. And I really like it because of that. So let me show you. In this book, the artist has chosen to keep to a color palette, and she goes into great detail about why she chose these particular colors and what they mean to her. She uses some sort of generally accepted, like, red is passion and love, and gold is money, things like that. So she chose this color palette. As a colorist, this color palette does not appeal to me. I don't know why. So I'm not using this palette to color the pictures. But there's her rendition of the Fool. And I'll show you a bigger picture. And I did color this. So the Fool, and just a quick flip to the Fool. This is if you haven't seen this book is on fantastic paper. It's got this beautiful cover. A matte cover with raised lettering on it. It folds out. It has these beautiful renditions that the artist has come up with. She is a feminist, so it is very female oriented. She's got some big pictures that you can color, which are wonderful. This is a self-portrait. And then this is where she talks about how she picked the palette. This is her with her friends. Yeah, this is a modern witch right here. Just hanging out with friends at a library reading books. And here's an introduction that talks a little bit about what the book is. And this is how to use it. And basically she says there's a card to color. There's an explanation of what it means. There are 4 prompt questions to help you reflect that you can write in. This is very much like a diary. And then there's a mandala, which is just basically the card repeated 4 times. I haven't found them very interesting, and in fact have covered up the one for the Fool. So there are some tips that help you understand the tarot in here. And what I have found is it's very generic, just, inferences and definitions of the cards, and so pretty easily used by anybody if you wanted to. This is a lovely little picture. I find that I really want to color these pictures. They're very comic bookish. And she was a comic book artist as well. This artist is Lisa Sterle. So that's why you get the comic book style. Like, here's some female superheroes. And you've got this would be the wands, and this would be the swords. Here's the coins, or pentacles as they might be called, and here is a cup overflowing. So these are the 4 suits. That's probably not Wonder Woman, but doesn't she look like Wonder Woman? All right, and so we start with the Fool, and this is how I colored the Fool. Now, basically, I didn't color with any sort of symbolism in mind. I did this quite a while ago, like a year ago, and I was testing out some new mediums that I had. I think they were watercolor pencils. But the Fool, the 0 card, is if you were to also consider the tarot as a journey, as a path, this is where you start. Now, the Fool is almost always depicted as looking up and walking off of a cliff. We always consider the Fool to be someone who is foolish or an idiot or making bad choices. That could be because she's about to walk off a cliff. In this modern rendition, she's actually got an iPod in her ears, and she's listening to something and looking above her and dancing, and her little dog, Toto, I had to say that, is dancing too, and she's about to walk off a cliff if she's not careful. What the general meaning of this card is a cautionary card, like watch where you're stepping, but don't be afraid to take new chances. So see, a very generic interpretation of the card. There is, if you believe in fate, maybe fate is out there, but if you're also taking steps towards your future, take chances, take risks, but don't take foolish risks. Don't walk off a cliff. And Lisa says that she put the dog in there. You will often see an animal in this card, and for her, it's the connection to nature. But the fact that the dog is also dancing off the cliff with her is very interesting, because and in her, what she says is that the Fool has such energy that she affects everyone around her with her energy. So she also, in her particular drawing, she added, in this beautiful boho dress, she added poppies, and I colored them red like the poppies in Wizard of Oz, because that's exactly what she says it is. She says that they're a warning of, like, don't fall asleep now. There's stuff happening, so don't fall asleep on your path. So that's basically how Lisa Sturl interprets it. And then, as the book goes, there are just some prompt questions. It's just like a diary. What's pulling you forward? What did you want to be when you were a child? What life goals do you still have left to fulfill? And take off the headphones. What's distracting you from your goal? So these are great questions to think about. I've gone back and forth whether I wanted to write my answers, because my answers might change a bit. So I've used them as reflections, and I'll sit here and look at these questions and just consider the answers in my head and let it percolate. And then if I feel like writing, I will write in my journal about it, especially this, what's distracting you from fulfilling your goals? Well, one of my goals for the last 6 months has been to start this YouTube channel. And what was distracting me was my own fear. I kept reading and hearing from people saying, just do it, just do it. The community is supportive. You'll only get better with every video. I know that's true, but I couldn't get past my own fear and anxiety about doing it. And then once I did that first video, which was my January completed pages, I almost threw up afterwards after it was published, because it was so much anxiety and I was so afraid, and I don't know what I'm afraid of. I'm doing this because it's part of my hobby and it's a joy for me to connect with you. And if I only connect with one other person, that's a win for me. So I'm not sure what I was so frightened of. So this reflection actually really helped me launch this YouTube video. Now, this page was the mandala. I covered it up with just some cardstock with some nice little sayings. I enjoyed that better. I also did try to attempt a little bit of coloring on the mandala, but that's that. So the 0 card, the Fool card, is your opportunity to get started. Now let's look at how Lulu Mayo, I really got to learn how to say that last name, interprets her Fool card. Now I've started coloring this, which is why there's a magazine page here. And just FYI, I found that magazine pages work really well. You don't have to worry. Sometimes cardstock, things will still bleed through. And I use magazine pages, because although a lot of people don't have magazines anymore, I still get magazines. So Lulu Mayo says the world is full of risk, but wonders too. Will you go searching? Will you take a chance? Are you comfortable with things not making sense? What are you willing to risk? Step on out. The world is waiting, but remember, this is a wild card. It's card 0. So her interpretation, which I found very fascinating, is a lucky cat. Now, this Chinese, Japanese lucky cat has both paws up. Usually you see one paw up because that for luck. Both paws up. I thought I'd research and see if there's other extra special meaning in Japanese culture, what both paws mean. But the kitty's eyes are closed. He looks like he's very trusting. He's got his 2 friends here with what I interpreted to be money bags. So I've painted it gold. This is all done in watercolor. And I use very, very little water. So it's thick, almost like an acrylic or a gouache. But I'm using the watercolor because the watercolor paints I have, which I don't have close by are the Rosa watercolor paints. Yes, I do. These Rosa watercolor paints that I got off Amazon after getting a lot of reviews on them, and they are so pigmented and they're very affordable, but they are Jack's hair, but they are so pigmented that I don't have anything that's these bright of colors. So I could have used gouache, it would have been easier, but my gouache colors are not as bright as this, and I really wanted it bright. And I researched I looked up images of this Lucky Cat, and these are the colors that tend to be associated with the Lucky Cat. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to bump the camera. These are the colors that are associated with the Lucky Cat, and so I chose to, I'm just doing a limited palette with these colors. I haven't decided what's happening up here yet, but I'm still working on it. There's still a lot of white, and so you're seeing a work in progress. But I chose the gold because it is a Lucky Cat. They're holding bags of money. In Japanese culture, this cat is to bring you good fortune. So there is something about the Fool being harbinger of good fortune, because taking chances can bring you good things. One of my favorite quotes is William Shatner from Star Trek. William Shatner says, I have said yes to many, let me start that again. I have said yes to many strange and wondrous things. And he has. He's been at the top of his game. He's been bankrupt and living in alleys. He's been back in he rebuilt himself through commercials and his sense of humor and his self-deprecating, funny way of being. And I really enjoy that. And I think that's what the Fool does. William Shatner is the perfect epitome of the Fool. He takes chances, and sometimes he fails and sometimes he doesn't. He hasn't always looked where he was going, and he's fallen off the cliff a couple times. But so be like Star Trek and Lucky Cats. And if it wasn't for me taking a chance, I wouldn't have started this YouTube channel. So I really consider this whole, while I was coloring the Fool was when I started the YouTube channel, and I really feel like I took away what was blocking me from moving forward and actually moved forward. So that's the Fool. I hope that you have found some information here, or if you had fears about coloring the tarot, that you are feeling better about it now, because I know a lot of you want to color, especially this book, but some people are feeling like, oh, but it's witchcraft. Just know it's really not. It's used by all sorts of people. People who identify as witches, people who don't identify as witches, and it is an art form. It is a game. It is a way to just self-reflect and meditate. It's a way to prompt yourself to write in your journals. And what I would like to see is any pictures that you have that are of the Fool. So because I know a lot of you have at least this book, and a lot of you have a lot more tarot books. So I'm going to put up a hashtag up here, and I hope that you all join in before my next video, which will be the number 1 card, which is the Magician, I believe. Yes, the number 1 card is the Magician. So the next video will be the Magician. So if you've colored the Fool or the Magician, follow this prompt, and I would love to showcase your work on here as other examples. Thank you very much for joining me today. I have loved chatting with you. Have a great day.